Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we'll be doing a deep dive on another competitive race. Today's race is the Wisconsin gubernatorial race, where incumbent Democrat Tony Evers is fending off a very strong challenge from Republican Tim Michels. And I'm going to say it at the front here. I'm not going to, make it suspenseful. I'm going to say it in the title of the video, and I'm going to say it at the front here. Tony Evers is going to lose. And I think he could lose by the most out of any incumbent governor this year. I think he's in a really tough race. I think there are a lot of reasons for people to be pessimistic about Tony Evers' chances. And most importantly, he's in a state that is going to be brutal for his party, the Democrats, this year. It's going to be hard for him to win on his own, but when you throw in the fact that Wisconsin itself has been looking like it's going to be very bad for the Democrats this year, it gets really bad really fast for Tony Evers. So let's start by looking at the 2020 election in Wisconsin. I'm just going to do a review because I think for a lot of you guys that you maybe haven't looked at this map, or if you have, it's been a while. So as you can see here, obviously you don't need me to explain politics in Wisconsin to you. I think you'll know Milwaukee, Madison are blue. Those are the two biggest counties for the Democrats. Eau Claire, which is a college town, is pretty blue. La Crosse over here is also pretty blue. This is a Native American reservation up here. You have some more liberal parts of the state. In all honesty, I don't really know why they're blue, but they are, and they've always been blue, and they're going to stay blue. Then you have, these Republican areas in Green Bay. Green Bay itself is pretty competitive, but it still votes. Its suburbs are still quite red, and it as a city is still pretty red. The Driftless area trended a lot to the right between 2016 and 2020. It's kind of these border counties with Minnesota. They all moved massively towards Donald Trump. And then the rural areas, of course, also moved towards Trump and were also fairly red. So that's Wisconsin, basically. I think it's important to just review that because there's going to be a lot of shifts internally within the state. And I think that, a lot of people forget that. But Wisconsin has been moving, like, a lot. And people, again, I think people forget this because people will say, oh, well, in 2000 and 2004, Obama voted for Gore and Kerry by the same amount voted for Biden for. And yes, that is true. But, like, the coalitions are wildly different. And I'll actually show you a map where Al Gore won Wisconsin by 0.2%. But as you can see, the coalitions are vastly different because in 2020, all of these border counties, I'll show you again, they were all red, but they all went for Gore. These rural areas are light red when they were all deep red in 2020. And if you look at the reddest counties in the state, the ones that stick out of this random rural county up here, but also the WOW counties, which are Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Waukesha, Washington, Ozaukee, and they all were, red, but they were a bit more democratic than they were in 2000. And so that, I guess, is just a mini look at the realignment in Wisconsin. You're thinking, oh, 2000, why does it matter what happened in Wisconsin 22 years ago? But the thing is, those shifts are going to continue. The areas that have gotten redder since 2000 are going to keep moving red, and the areas that have gotten bluer since 2000 are going to keep getting bluer. And so that's why I think, in short, Tony Evers is in a lot of trouble. So to better illustrate this, let's look at the polls here. And I don't really want to use the polls too much because I think you can make a better argument without the polls, although the polls are going to support my argument here. So in these governor polls, Tony Evers has a lead of 0.4%. So he's literally up by an amount within the margin of error, and it's been pretty consistently quite close. Again, Fabrizio, which is Trump's pollster, has shown Michels up. DFP, which again was the poll that had Pat Ryan lose New York 19 by 8, has Michels up. I don't really care about that. Trafalgar, again, which we know is a Republican poll, as Michels up by 1. I don't really care about any of these polls because they're all either Republican polls or polls that have been historically really bad for Democrats. But to me, what's more concerning for Tony Evers is that he hasn't really found any big leads in any of these polls. He is trailing, he's within the margin of error in this Marquette LV poll. He is tied in this YouGov poll. He's only up by 2 in a PPP poll, and again, PPP tends to overestimate Democrats. He's tied in the Fox poll, and so let's talk about the 2020 polls because there was a big polling miss in Wisconsin. Biden was up by 8.4% on election day, and he only won by 0.6. That's a 7.8% polling miss. And if you were to, not to be the polling miss application guy, but if you were to apply that to Tony Evers, he'd lose by 7.5. He would get blown out. Now, be cautious about these polls. Applying the 2020 polling miss to a 2022 polling average is not going to be a good indication of where the race is because, again, polls overcorrect. They fix their mistakes. They get better. They start, flipping things and changing their methodology, and they're doing that this year. And I think, in 2022, in all but one election, the polls, or even dating back to the Georgia runoffs, all but one election, the polls overestimated the Republican Party. So there is a good argument you can make in favor of the polls overestimating Republican support this year, even though it was vice versa in 2020 and 2016. But in Wisconsin, I don't really think that's going to happen. Wisconsin has been historically really bad in the polls, even dating back to the times before 2016, where they missed. They had Clinton up by 6, she lost by 1. They had Biden up by 8.5. He only won by half a point. And the fact that Evers can find just like a 0.4% lead is just disastrous for him. And he's only running 3 points ahead of Mandela Barnes, who's on track to lose that Senate race by around 5 points. And by the way, I think the polling delta is a little overrated, so I don't even expect Tony Evers to run 2% ahead of Barnes. I think it'll be only about a 1 point delta, because earlier polls back in August showed Evers actually running behind Mandela Barnes. But let's be real here, okay? Tony Evers is polling terribly for a Democrat in Wisconsin. He's underperforming his 2018 polls. He's underperforming Biden's polls by a lot. And, he's just not doing anything to inspire confidence as a Democrat in a state like Wisconsin. And so I think to get a better idea of what he's done in the past, let's look at the 2018 governor's race, where, again, he did win, and it was against an incumbent Republican, so it was a decent showing, I guess you could say. But it gets pretty lackluster when you look into more factors. So first of all, this was a D plus 8.6 national environment, meaning that for Evers' governor race, which, again, you can't always do this, but I'm going to do it here just as an example for those of you who care about it. In Evers' governor's race, he ran 7.5% to the right of the country. So, he underperformed national partisanship by 7.5%. Okay. And I think already you guys are smart enough to know 2022 is not going to be a D plus 7.5 years. It's probably going to be maybe a neutral year, maybe a slightly Republican leaning year. Even if you still think it's going to be a D plus 1 year, he'd still lose by 6.5. Okay. So if you apply a polling error to Wisconsin, he'd lose by 7.5. If you apply a neutral environment in in R+1 environment, which was my prediction, and a 2018 adjusted error, he would lose by 8.5. And if you throw in some shifts, you could easily get to a 10-point loss for Tony Evers. Now, no one take that out of context. I'm not saying he's going to lose by 10%. I would be stunned if he loses by that much. But here's the thing: Tony Evers in 2018 was only able to win because he did very well in these collar counties. Again, as you can see here, he was able to win a lot of counties that voted for Trump 2 years later. As you can see, a lot of red here, and it was blue in 2018. And yes, these counties are small on the surface, but they add up, and they were able to make a severe dent in the margin that Scott Walker would have needed to get from the state. Additionally, Evers did fairly well in Milwaukee. He won in Kenosha, which has been trending away from Democrats, and he did decently well in the suburbs, or in the rural areas. Sorry, not suburbs. In the rural areas, turnout was fairly low, and Evers was able to get 40% in counties that Biden got only 35% in. So he outran Biden in most of these counties by mid to high single digits. And that's why he won. Now, in fairness, he did get beat pretty badly in the wild counties. Again, he lost Waukesha by 34. Waukesha voted for Trump by 21. So yeah, he ran 13% behind Joe Biden in Waukesha. He won Washington, as you can see right here. It's on your screen, by 46. Sorry, did I say he won? He lost Washington by 46. Biden lost Washington by 38, so he ran 8 points behind Biden in Washington. Then Nozaki, which is the most competitive of these counties, he still lost it by 23, and Biden only lost it by about 12. So he ran I want to say 13, 8, and 12 points behind Biden in these wild counties, which I think is going to be an average of 33 divided by 3. So he ran an average of if my quick mental math there is correct, he ran an average of 11% behind Biden in the wild counties. Now, in fairness, Scott Walker was a good candidate for the wild counties. He didn't have a ton of appeal to the working class region of the state, but he was a good candidate for the wild counties. You can say a little overblown, sure, but we do know this: the wild counties are red or down ballot. They like to vote. There are a lot of voters in those counties that will voted for Biden but are going to be voting Republican. Both Johnson and Michaels this year. They did in 2018. In fact, the only areas as in 2018, Tammy Baldwin won Wisconsin by 10% statewide, and she outran Biden in basically every county. The only areas where she did worse than Joe Biden, worse than Joe Biden, were in the wild counties. There were select pockets of wealthy suburban voters who voted for Leah Vukmir, the Republican opponent, just because they vote Republican down ballot. voted for Joe Biden because they were not fans of Donald Trump. Okay, we know those voters; they're pretty interesting to analyze, but like they'll be voting for Tim Michaels in November, 1,000%. Some of them are going to vote for Evers because of the Dobbs decision, but like most of them will be voting for Tim Michaels, and so that is why it's going to be very difficult to see Evers actually making up ground in the WOW counties. Because, he'll do better than he did in 2018, sure. But he's not going to do well enough to actually offset the fact that the WOW counties will be making up a higher share of the electorate as they usually do in midterms. Because, again, turnout from urban areas like Milwaukee decreases while turnout from the suburbs like the WOW counties spikes. And so when you have those votes make up a higher percentage of the total vote, that hurts Evers because they're Republican counties. And in addition to that, he'll outrun his 2018 numbers, but he's going to lose, or he's going to do a lot worse than Biden did in 2020. And additionally, even if he gains his 2018 numbers in a meaningful way here, he'll be losing a ton of support in these counties, in these working class border counties, I should say. Sorry. And the fact that he did so well here in 2018 while only winning by a point statewide just shows that he had a very flaky coalition even in 2018. He's now in a redder environment against a better opponent for these areas. He's barely leading in the polls. And again, the polls have been undershooting Republicans and working class voters for like 8 years now. So that's not going to change anytime soon. And throw that all in, and he probably gets smoked in these counties. I think he loses a lot of the counties he won in 2018, especially in this region of the state. And that's why he's in trouble. So let's visualize this. I will prove it to you. I'll prove to you that Tony Evers is in trouble. So this is a handy website. It's called Election Shuffler. So it's elections/daily.com. You can go to tools. It's Election Shuffler. It's a really fun thing to play around with if you want to make predictions. Let's do this here. So we're going to multi-select some counties. We're going to do this in increments here. So the entire western western part of the state is going to trend towards Tim Michaels, because we know that it trended towards Trump in 2020. It's been trending Republican for a while. The Democratic incumbent in that part of the state's retiring, and this entire part of the state is going to trend right. So let's just throw in, and I'll throw in these counties too because they've been trending right for a while too. So let's throw in, we've selected these. That's going to be a shift of let's just do these counties in 2020 moved to Trump. So let's say R+4, just to be generous to Tony Evers, okay? So already the Republicans will be up by 2,000% in a 2020 style turnout. Another thing we have to do is we have to move the WOW counties to the right too, because again, this is 2020 partisanship. So let's throw in, he underperformed Trump, or Evers underperformed Biden by 11 in 2018. He'll probably underperform him by like a little more than half that. So let's say R+7. That's a 1-point Republican victory, okay? He did poorly in Green Bay, in that whole Green Bay metro area. Let's throw in the Green Bay statistics. All right, let's look at that. Let's see what that gets us to. We're going to, we'll also throw in, just for fun, Sawano. So Green Bay area, let's shift that. Let's just say 5 points to the right, okay? And again, these are estimates. These aren't exact predictions, but estimates. He'll lose Door County, by the way. And this is the bell of the state. He'll lose it by 3.5%. So he's down by 1.7%. Now, most importantly, let's take a look at the Madison suburbs and also Kenosha. These areas, Madison trended to the left in 2020, but it's more Republican down ballot. And Kenosha area has been trending to the right for a while and then really accelerated in 2020. Well, let's give him a 3-point shift against Tony Evers there. That's a 2.5-point margin of victory for Tim Michaels. But there's one more thing that gets in. This is where it gets really bad for Tony Evers. He's in serious trouble in Milwaukee, not because I think he'll lose margin support, but turnout will be down, as it usually is in these midterms. Let's say it goes down 5%. Let's say turnout in the Native American reservation doesn't mean a ton, but let's say it goes down by 5% too, right? Let's say turnout from La Crosse goes down, as it usually does in midterms. It makes a larger share of the electorate. All turnout in the WOW counties spikes, because as we know, WOW county tends to go up by 8 to 10%. Let's say that's all spiked by 10%, just to be generous here, or give him 9-10 point margin to be generous to Michaels. Evers now down by 3%, and I think he's going to also lose Portage. For what it's worth, Portage has been really shaky for Democrats. I think, let's just say he loses it by a point there. We're going to throw that in. Whoops, I did not mean to do that, but okay. You know what? Just fixed it. Close enough. I don't know why it randomly did that. Whatever. Just fixed it. So that's a 3.5 point margin of victory for Tim Michaels over Tony Evers. And look, you can say I'm being generous to Tim Michaels. You can say, Tony Evers will do better in the working class areas. He'll do better in Portage. He'll do better in Milwaukee, right? Turnout won't be that bad, okay? Fine. Give him 1 or 2 of those 4 or 5 points you can make. Even then, he still would lose by over a point. And I don't think it's going to be even close. I think we're going to get a call out of Wisconsin a lot sooner than people think. And yes, It's a slow vote counting state. I think Evers will maybe hold on for a while on election night, but like with the way that things are going for Democrats right now, especially in Wisconsin, I think Evers is done, and I can say that confidently. So again, this is one of my hot takes before the election. I think we're getting close to the point where I can say confidently that Tony Evers is in a lot of trouble. He's going to lose. And like, again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll take credit for it. But Tony Evers is going to lose re-election. I am like very confident he's going to lose again. I don't really know what else I can say here, but like Tim Michaels is a good recruit for the working class areas. He isn't amazing in the suburbs, but the suburbs are more Republican down ballot anyways, so he's going to be fine there. Turnout from Democratic areas in Wisconsin is very flaky, especially in the midterms, and I think it's just getting dicey for Tony Evers right now. So, yeah, that's my prediction. I think he's going to lose by 3.5%, 3%, somewhere in that ballpark. Again, rough map. I'll release my final county predictions in my final videos. Obviously, I've got those teed up, so stay tuned for those. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you think Tony Evers is going to win? Do you think he's going to lose? Do you agree with me? He's basically dead on arrival. Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.